The number of unemployed people in the country rose to 7.9 million in the fourth quarter of last year. Sectors that shared jobs in this period were in community and social services, construction, agriculture, and trade. Kozatu says the recent data on unemployment is disappointing. It says the country may expect for things to get worse due to the country's failing infrastructure, energy supply, and the challenging economic environment, amongst others.
Normally there's a bit of a pickup because of the tourism, holidays, and so forth. So the fact that unemployment is increased by 0.2%, that's depressing. But to be honest with you, we actually feel to be much worse, given the levels of the chaos, the crisis we're experiencing in transit. And we feel it's going to get worse in the next quarter because the mining industry is giving out retrenchment notices, because mining industry just simply can't export its mineral exports if you can't get them onto the trains, if you can't get them through the ports of Transnet. So that's quite worrying. We are actually fearful about what might happen to the manufacturing sector too if you don't begin to turn things around at transit.
South Africa was able to create employment for 8 consecutive quarters. That is 16.7 million people employed in 2 years without interruption. Economists say this is a mild setback. However, more still needs to be done to address the country's high levels of unemployment.
I think what also needs to be emphasized with these numbers specifically is that despite the quarterly decline in the fourth quarter of last year, it was mild, first of all. Around 22,000 jobs were lost in the fourth quarter. But if we just look at the momentum, the economy has managed to create jobs over the past 8 consecutive quarters. Just before the quarter of last year, we had created close to 2.5 million jobs. So I think that is critical. And even on a year-on-year basis, employment was higher by close to 79,000 jobs compared to the fourth quarter of 2022, which means that there is an upward trend, but obviously the issues of unemployment remain.
Stats says despite the recent increase in unemployment, South Africa has successfully created jobs in 2 years without fail.
This is the first time in 2 years that we see a decrease in the number of employed persons. The number of employed persons have been rising over the last 2 years. In terms of the unemployed, we see an increase by 46,000 people, from 7.8 million to 7.9 million. Having said so, when you have seen a decrease in the number of people employed and an increase in the number of people that are unemployed, that is actively looking for employment, then that increases your rate of unemployment.
Meanwhile, the markets shrugged off the data.
I don't think the market's massively surprised by these numbers. And if you look at anecdotally, South Africa needs around 3% GDP growth for job creation to really start coming through. And as you know, we're in quite a tough backdrop at the moment. There's a lot of headwinds and economic growth is quite tough to come by. So on the back of that, it kind of makes sense that we're seeing these numbers. And I think we need some real growth to come through before we start to close the gap a little bit.
The youth remains vulnerable in the labor market as youth unemployment increased to 4.7 million, meaning that the prospects of them getting into the labor market are further diminished. Nothando Makutulela, SABC News, Johannesburg.